I want to thank the organizers for this conference. It's a conference that I have really enjoyed, more, I think, than any other conference I have ever been to, and I've never said that any. Thank you very much. So what can theoretical computer science do for the study of consciousness? In our study, we mainly use the fact that computation takes time. This fact was always known, of course, but computation time was never viewed as crucial for solving deep philosophical problems, certainly of consciousness or free will. So I'm going to start with free will. I say we because all this work is joint with Lenore. We start with free will because, first, it's an old and puzzling problem of consciousness. We do have a solution for it, one much like Stanislas Dehaene, something like that. Yeah, Google says that's not the way to pronounce it, but yeah, I'll say Stan. But derived independently of his. And our solution shows how theoretical computer science enables one to come to grips with a rather difficult free will problem. So let me start with what's the free will problem. So the paradox of free will is highlighted by Lucretius. So this is over 2,000 years ago, about 100 years before Christ. If all movement is always interconnected, the new arising from the old in a determinate order, if the atoms never swerve so as to originate some new movement that will snap the bonds of fate, the everlasting sequence, cause and effect, what is the source of the free will possessed by living things throughout the earth? The paradox, I really like Samuel Johnson's observation. So Samuel Johnson lived just as Newton was dying off. He knew about Newton, and his beautifully crisp statement is, all theory is against the freedom of the will. All theory meaning Newton. All experience is for it. What a wonderful statement. Stan Dehaene bestows a contemporary voice. Our brain states are clearly not uncaused and do not escape the laws of physics. Nothing does. But our decisions are genuinely free whenever they are based on a conscious deliberation that proceeds autonomously, without any impediment, carefully weighing the pros and cons before committing to a course of action. When this occurs, we are correct in speaking of a voluntary decision, even if it is, of course, ultimately caused by our circumstances and our genes. Now, our point is that computation takes time. To make a decision, a CTM evaluates its alternatives, an evaluation that takes time. And during that time, the CTM is free, and should feel free, to choose whichever outcome it reckons best. So why does the CTM feel that it has free will? When required to solve a problem, many long-term memory processors compete to produce the Conscious Turing Machine's final decision. But the Conscious Turing Machine is consciously aware only of what got onto the stage into short-term memory, which is not all that was submitted to the competition. Moreover, much of the Conscious Turing Machine, meaning most of its processors, are not privy to the unconscious chatter among the processors. To the CTM, enough is consciously unknown about the process that the decision can appear at times to be plucked from thin air. Even so, although the CTM does not consciously know how its suggestions were arrived at, except for what is in the high-level broad strokes broadcast by short-term memory, it does know that its suggestions came from inside itself. The CTM can rightly take credit for its suggestions. After all, it did come from inside the CTM. Can explain some of them with high-level stories from its episodic memory. And as for what it cannot explain, it can say, well, I don't know, or I don't remember. It is the knowledge that there are choices, that it, the CTM, has knowledge of those choices, and ignorance as well, that generates the feeling of free will. As for how time enters the picture, to a God of the deterministic world, who does all computations in an instance, the optimal decision to be taken is clear as soon as the problem is stated. God knows. His computations are instantaneous. They take him no time. All theory is against the freedom of the will. But the CTM does not know the decision. To know, it must compute, and computation takes time. And during that time, the CTM knows it can, will choose whichever option suits it best. All experience is for it. That's it. Okay, done all that here. Yes, so I put in the slide, Lenore was not too happy with it, but anyway, I wanted to show you a little bit more about what theoretical computer science can do for us. So I'm going to mention at least one theorem. The following theorem shows that randomness is not needed for free will. Maybe because, which I like because there's some of the arguments with Bird and Donkey was involved randomness. So here's the theorem. If a probabilistic CTM can have free will, then a deterministic CTM can have free will too. And the argument, the proof, is that a deterministic CTM that is given a pseudo-random generator, and this is a very specific formal notion of generator, and a random seed of about the same length as the generator, can simulate a probabilistic CTM. And no one will be able, you won't be able to distinguish whether it's the probabilistic or the deterministic. So that's the theorem. QED, yes. So that's half of the talk. Well, a third of the talk. I have some frequently asked questions that maybe I'll be able to get to, maybe not. So we focus next on feelings of pain and pleasure. Lenore and I have split the problem between us. I work on pain, and she works on pleasure. We would especially like to understand what might generate feelings of pain and pleasure. The agony of pain and the ecstasy of joy beg for an explanation, if only because they are such a puzzle. The puzzle is that a mechanism, in our case the body, is able to generate those feelings. How can it do that? So to understand the problem, let's consider pain asymbolia. After a bump on the head, a person can become pain asymbolic, meaning they don't suffer from the feeling of pain. They know what pain is from the time before they got the bump, but nevertheless, they don't suffer from the feeling of pain. They can be burned, frozen, smashed, cut. All these things cause pain, and they know it, but not suffering. Pain asymbolics claim to still have the pain. They clearly know where and what kind it is, how hot or cold, but say it's not unpleasant, it's okay. Wouldn't you like pain to be like that for you? No. Yes, of course not. But it's not good because kids that are born at pain asymbolic, with pain asymbolia rarely live past the age of 3. So what's missing in the pain asymbolic's head? Something's missing. We would especially like to understand what might generate feelings of pain and pleasure. Look at it this way. Today's robots are pain asymbolic. And we want to know what is missing in a robot's brain that could make it feel pain as humans feel it. Before looking into it, why are we so taken by this question? First, because it is a hard problem, and to our mind, a hardest of the hard problems. Because it's so very hard to understand how a machine could really feel pain. But why should robots suffer anyway? So this comes up. Several reasons. For the same reason, animals must suffer. Animals born without the suffering of pain don't live long. Because we want robots to have empathy, as Lenore had mentioned, humans find it hard to understand a feeling if they have never had the feeling. And we want insight into pain in humans and animals and robots. So how might a robot with a CTM brain feel pain? We have two suggestions for the feeling of pain. Only two. First, broadcast. Extreme pain is an actor, a chunk that takes over all short-term memory. It prevents all actors that have a lower magnitude weight from reaching the stage. Pain messages, and only pain messages, are broadcast. Every processor knows of the pain. With few exceptions, nothing else can get into short-term memory. And here's some confirmation. Under conditions that normally cause agony, pain asymbolics can think while normals cannot. You, under extreme pain, you cannot play chess, but a pain asymbolic person can. In a Darwinian design, you might expect pain to lead to constructive thinking, but agony actually interferes with constructive thinking. Isn't that strange? How can that possibly help? Well, for one, it stops you from doing what you're doing. It absolutely stops you. So does stopping what you're doing apply as well to low levels of pain? I'm looking here at extreme pain because that's kind of the hardest of them to understand. Does stopping what you're doing apply as well to low levels of pain? And the answer is yes. From the impact of persistent pain on working memory and learning by Smith and Ayers, here's a quote: participants that identified as experiencing low levels of pain for over 6 months performed significantly worse than pain-free participants on a variety of tests. So yes, it does interfere. However, while broadcasts account for some pain, they do not account for the sudden excruciating pain at the moment you tear a ligament. That's ever happened to you? You know how painful that can be. What does? And our answer is interrupts. Sudden extreme pain, like tearing a ligament, interrupts all unconscious processors. Interrupts in the sense that computer science people talk about it. Interrupts, as opposed to broadcasts, cause processors to instantly put their work on the stack, forces them to pay their maximum immediate attention to the interrupt. Interrupts differ from broadcasts, which send their information to processors, there's that beautiful broadcast, without forcing them to put what they're doing on a stack. And what, I said there were two things that come in. Brainish is the other one. Paul Yang will be talking about this after my talk. Brainish is the multimodal language that processors use to broadcast and communicate among themselves. Brainish screams pain. Pain. The screams integrate multimodal concepts. Have you ever dreamt that you had a pain? So I've had this. That you had a pain, perhaps in your leg. I had a pain in my, I was sleeping, I had a pain in my leg, it was a cramp, terrible pain. And then I woke up and there was absolutely no pain at all. It's the weirdest thing. The weirdest thing, there was, my leg was not cramped, there was no pain. No pain at all. And there's a paper, there's a paper by Benjamin Baird at the Center for Sleep and Consciousness at the University of Wisconsin. Quote, "The feeling of physical pain during dreams, which doesn't occur to everyone or that often, but does not usually carry over into the waking." So at least my experience is more common than the other experience, which you may have had, where it does carry over. The important thing here is that such a dream shows the power of brainish to create a gist of pain. The dream is wonderful because you have no input, you have no output. That pain you feel is entirely created by your brain. The dreams you have are entirely created by your brain. And those images you see in your brain, those feelings you have, those are the gists of in our chunks, the brains. So how might a robot with a CTM brain feel pain? So many processors of long-term memory are involved in responding to pain. The above two are major suggestions. If you have another thought on that, I would love to hear it. Other suggestions include, for example, vicious cycles. In the deterministic CTM, concentration on pain reduces pain, permitting fear to take its place. Concentration on fear reduces fear, permitting pain to take its place. Another very important one is the model of the world. Lenore mentioned that. The model of the world is what we know of the world. We don't know the world, we know only what's in that model of the world. That model of the world has a coarse model of the CTM itself, and that model is in pain. I asked Irene Tracy how Thich Nhat Hanh could immolate himself without screaming. This is absolutely amazing to me. Absolutely amazing that one can do that. By the way, Irene Tracy is the head of the Department of Clinical Neurosciences at Oxford. She is known by some to be the so-called Queen of Pain, a title she does not like, but she likes the newer title. Next year she'll be Vice Chancellor at Oxford University. And she's such a lovely person. Her answer was, by twisting the bad of the pain into the good of the pain. He saw what was good about the pain. And she thought that that was how he could do it. So how are these ideas to be checked? For example, we consider ourselves on the right track if these ideas could be used to give us a superpower, such as the ability to withstand great pain without anesthesia. Without Stewart's wonderful...
Hey, I still need a job.
And 12. You won't lose it, right? In the CTM, when pain is unbearable, only the pain can get into STM. Only the pain. I asked my dentist to not give me Novocaine for a root canal. But when his drill touched my nerve, I could still manage to stop it. I could and did scream, "Stop!" The scream did get into STM. You see now, how can that be? The theory says nothing can get into STM, and here the scream did get in. So how is that possible? Is this a failure of the model? If so, we haven't found a good answer yet, and it certainly seems like a failure to me. Should we change the model? I hope not. I'm viewing this model, we are viewing the model as a mathematical model. We have defined it, we are the formalism, there are things that follow from it, and we don't want to change the model, we just want to understand the model. What does follow, what does not follow. That's what we would like to have. Anyway, so the important thing here is that the CTM is a simple mathematical model. Our goal is to fix the model, to freeze it, and explore it. Determine the good and the bad of it. Keep it simple. That's what we want. Make no unnecessary changes. I gave this talk at MIT, and there was Robert Yang, a professor of brain and cognitive sciences there, suggested during the talk about the screen getting into STM, that the CTM is built to deal unconsciously with any problem where the weight exceeds some interrupt level. His suggestion, which I had not thought of, and I thought was quite nice. Our explanation is actually this, and it's a property of the weighting system. The CTM, the weights are numbers. The CTM has no upper bound on weights. None. Whatever the weight of a pain, a higher weight is always possible. And that's how it's possible. And with that suggestion, absolutely no change is required in the model. Okay, so that's most of the talk. I could stop here. How much time do I have?
A bit more than 3 minutes, yeah, including time for Q&A.
Okay, so I may not go through all of this. Let's see what we can do. Why is STM so tiny? And Lenore mentioned that already. So all processors focus on the same thought. You know, when people try to build the CTM, the first thing they say is, short-term memory is cheap, build a big short-term memory. But consider the extreme where every process, some people think of the STM as like a blackboard, and every processor has its own place on the blackboard where it can write. And in that case, where's the focus? I'll write my stuff, you'll write your stuff. How does the CTM focus on what's necessary? What are GISs? They are short brainish sentences. They are all that we know of the world. To understand what GISs can do for us, consider the multimodal GISs that make up a dream. Because those frames of a dream are the GISs in these chunks. Libet, why does it take an unconscious chunk roughly 300 milliseconds to reach consciousness? Because at its creation, any chunk is one of roughly 10 to the 7th chunks competing for short-term memory. It takes time to climb the tree. Not too surprising. Sleep, what's it for? Oh, yes, what is sleep for? Sleep enables dreaming. You cannot dream without sleeping. People who have dreams when they're not sleeping, they're called hallucinations and mucks up their view of the world. Sleep enables dreaming, and dreams enable rehearsing and trying out new things. People who take monoamine oxidase inhibitors, I'm told, do not dream, and they can't play the piano. They can't practice. Isn't that interesting? Yes? No?
No, I just never heard they couldn't play the piano.
Yeah, so they can't practice. I mean, dreams. Who, what creates the scene? A processor. And the processors also compete to win the role of dream generator. Who, what responds to the current scene? All processors. That's why you are really living in something like the dream world. In the dream world, in fact, usually most people in a dream world, they don't know they're dreaming. How come you know that you're not dreaming? Because, in fact, you're getting feedback from the outside world. In a dream, you don't get feedback, so not too surprising that you don't recognize it. Why are dreams important for understanding consciousness? I said, because they show the power of GIST. Any predictions? We have lots of predictions. Here's one, really, one that you can really think about. For example, in this competition tree, negative and every negative weight can be countered by a positive weight of the same size. So one of the predictions is that however terrible something is, something positive can cancel it. Now, is that true? That's a prediction. What is meditation doing? Oh, no, it's still predictions. I see the predictions. Look, for example, okay, the pain, an example is the pain of a scraped knee. Remember as a kid, you're scraping a knee, is canceled by a mother's kiss and a bandage. Right? Isn't that wonderful? What is meditation doing? I'm almost there. Paying attention to something can make that thing disappear. Just as bathroom tiles disappear when you're sitting on the john, so tired that your eyes stop saccading. And how does hypnosis work? Oh, I've hypnotized lots of kids when I was in military school. It didn't work at MIT. But anyway, I would like to understand this better. And that's the end.